My son had vanished for 2 weeks without a single explanation. When I decided to drive to his house in Atlanta to check on him, what I discovered shattered my entire world. A destroyed home, my grandson hiding in absolute terror, and a truth darker than I could have ever imagined. This is the story of a mother's fight for justice. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 63 years old, and I live alone in a quiet neighborhood in Savannah, Georgia. My story begins on a cold October morning when I first realized something was terribly wrong. Michael, my son, hadn't answered his phone in 2 weeks. Now, Michael is a good man, a devoted father to his 8-year-old boy Tyler. He never goes more than a few days without calling his old mama, especially not during football season when we'd argue about whether the Falcons or the Saints were having a better year. I remember sitting at my kitchen table that Sunday morning, staring at my phone, willing it to ring. The sweet tea I'd poured was getting warm, and the peach cobbler I'd baked for church was cooling on the counter, but I couldn't focus on anything except that silence. 2 weeks of nothing. No calls, no texts, not even one of those silly videos Tyler likes to send me of his latest Lego creations. The first few days, I told myself he was probably just busy. Michael works in construction management, and October is always a hectic time before the winter slowdown. But by day 5, that familiar knot in my stomach told me something wasn't right. I called his work, and his supervisor, Mr. Johnson, sounded confused. Miss Margaret, Michael hasn't been in all week. We thought he was taking some personal time. That's when I knew. Michael would never miss work without calling. He's responsible, always has been, ever since he was Tyler's age and would help me tend the garden behind our old house. I tried calling his neighbors, anyone who might have seen him around the Oak Ridge subdivision where he lived. But nobody had answers, just concerned voices asking if everything was all right. By the second week, I couldn't take it anymore. I packed a small bag, left a note for my neighbor Miss Ruby to water my plants, and started the 4-hour drive to Atlanta. The whole way there, I kept thinking about the last time we'd talked. Michael had sounded tired, stressed about something, but when I asked him about it, he just said work was getting heavy. If only I'd pushed him to tell me more. When I finally reached Peachtree Lane in the Oak Ridge subdivision, the sun was already setting behind the tall pine trees. Michael's house looked dark, too dark for a Sunday evening when Tyler should be getting ready for school the next day. I knocked on the familiar blue door, the one Tyler had helped his daddy paint last spring, but there was no answer. The silence felt wrong, like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. I tried the doorknob, not really expecting it to turn, but it did. Michael never left his door unlocked, especially not with Tyler in the house. My heart started racing as I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The living room was destroyed. The coffee table was overturned, and I could see broken pieces of what looked like Tyler's favorite Superman mug scattered across the hardwood floor. The couch cushions were thrown everywhere, and there was a dark stain on the carpet that made my blood run cold. I called out for them, my voice shaking. Michael Tyler, it's Grandma Maggie. But the house answered back with nothing but that terrible, heavy silence. I made my way upstairs, my legs feeling like they were made of lead. Michael's bedroom was empty, the bed unmade. His office looked like someone had gone through his papers, but it was Tyler's room that broke my heart. The little boy's sanctuary, usually so neat and organized, looked like a tornado had hit it. Lego blocks were scattered everywhere, and his bookshelf had been knocked over. But then I heard it, a tiny sound, like a plastic bottle rolling across the floor. It was coming from under Tyler's bed. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial 911, but somehow I managed to get the words out. Please, I need help. My son is missing, and there's something under my grandson's bed. The police arrived within 10 minutes, their red and blue lights painting Tyler's bedroom walls in flashing colors that reminded me of a nightmare. Officer Martinez, a young woman with kind eyes, knelt down beside me as I pointed toward the bed with a trembling finger. "Under there," I whispered, afraid that speaking too loud might somehow make everything worse. Without hesitation, Officer Martinez and her partner, a tall man named Officer Brooks, lifted the twin bed in one smooth motion, and there, curled up in the smallest ball I'd ever seen, was my precious Tyler. His clothes were filthy, his hair matted with sweat, and he was clutching an empty water bottle like it was the most valuable thing in the world. His eyes were wide open, staring at nothing. And when I reached for him, he didn't even blink. "Tyler, baby, it's Grandma Maggie," I said, my voice breaking into 1,000 pieces. But he just stayed there, frozen like a little statue, holding onto that bottle. Officer Martinez gently scooped him up in her arms, and I followed them out to the ambulance, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst right out of my chest. The ride to Emory University Hospital felt like it lasted forever. I sat next to Tyler in the ambulance, trying to smooth down his hair and whispering all the things I used to tell Michael when he was scared as a little boy. "Everything's going to be okay, sweetheart. Grandma's here now. You're safe." But Tyler never responded, never even looked at me. He just kept staring at that empty bottle like it held all the secrets in the world. At the hospital, they rushed Tyler into the emergency room while I sat in the waiting area, clutching my purse and trying not to fall apart completely. A nurse brought me some coffee, but my hands were shaking too much to hold the cup steady. After what felt like hours, a doctor came out to talk to me. Dr. Sarah Chen was a petite woman with a gentle voice and eyes that had seen too much sadness for someone so young. "Miss Margaret," she said, sitting down beside me, "Tyler is stable, but he's severely dehydrated and malnourished. We're getting fluids into him now, and physically, he's going to be fine. But I'm more concerned about his mental state. He's in shock, and he hasn't spoken a word since he arrived." I nodded, trying to process what she was telling me. "Can I see him?" "Of course, but I need to prepare you. He's not responding to anyone right now. We've called in our best child psychologist, and she'll be here first thing in the morning. For now, we just need to let him rest and feel safe." They moved Tyler to a private room on the pediatric ward, and I pulled a chair right up next to his bed. He looked so small in that big hospital bed, still holding that water bottle, still staring at nothing. I took his free hand in mine, feeling how cold and thin his fingers were, and started talking to him about anything I could think of. I told him about the new kittens that had been born in Miss Ruby's barn, about the pecans falling from the tree in my backyard, about how his daddy used to love my peach cobbler when he was Tyler's age. The next morning, Detective Rodriguez arrived with his notebook and a grave expression that told me he'd already seen too much of whatever had happened in Michael's house. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a Spanish accent that reminded me of the construction workers Michael used to bring home for Sunday dinner. "Miss Margaret," he said, settling into the chair across from Tyler's bed. "I need to ask you some questions about your son. When did you last speak with Michael?" I told him about the phone call 2 weeks ago, about how Michael had sounded tired and stressed. Detective Rodriguez wrote everything down, nodding occasionally and asking follow-up questions about Michael's habits, his friends, his ex-wife Amanda. When I mentioned Amanda's name, I saw something change in the detective's expression. "Tell me about Amanda," he said, leaning forward slightly. I sighed, looking at Tyler's sleeping face. "She used to be such a sweet girl. Michael met her when she was teaching second grade at Tyler's school, but then she got involved with online gambling, and everything went downhill from there. The debts, the lies, the way she'd scream at Tyler over the smallest things. Michael finally divorced her last year and got full custody. Detective Rodriguez made more notes, then looked up at me with serious eyes. Miss Margaret, I need you to know that we found blood in Michael's living room. We're treating this as a possible homicide investigation now. The world seemed to tilt sideways when he said those words. Homicide. My Michael. My sweet boy who used to catch fireflies in mason jars and bring me dandelions like they were roses, might be gone forever. I felt Tyler's hand squeeze mine just a little, and when I looked down at him, his eyes were focused on my face for the first time since we'd found him. Grandma Maggie, he whispered, his voice so small I had to lean in close to hear him. Is Daddy really dead? Those were the first words Tyler had spoken since we found him, and they cut through my heart like a knife. I squeezed his little hand and tried to keep my voice steady, even though I was falling apart inside. I don't know yet, sweetheart. But whatever happened, Grandma's going to make sure you're safe. Detective Rodriguez moved his chair closer to Tyler's bed, his voice gentle but professional. Tyler, I know this is scary, but can you tell me and your grandma what happened that night? Take your time. Son. Tyler's grip on my hand tightened, and I could feel him trembling. He looked at me with those big brown eyes that reminded me so much of Michael at that age, then slowly nodded. It was raining really hard, he began, his voice barely above a whisper. I was in my room building a castle with my Legos, the one Daddy said looked like the one in that movie we watched. He paused, clutching that empty water bottle against his chest. Then the doorbell started ringing, over and over. Daddy looked through the peephole and his face got all weird and scared. I'd never seen Daddy look like that before. My heart was breaking listening to my grandson relive whatever horror he'd witnessed. Detective Rodriguez kept writing, occasionally nodding to encourage Tyler to continue. Daddy ran to me and whispered real quiet. Tyler, get under your bed right now. Don't come out until I call for you. Okay. He pulled my blanket down so nobody could see me hiding there. I was scared, but I did what Daddy told me to do. Tyler's voice got even quieter, and I had to lean in close to hear him. Through a little gap in the blanket, I saw Mommy come in with a really tall man. The man looked mean, and he didn't say nothing, just stood there with his arms crossed while Mommy looked around the room. The mention of Amanda made my blood run cold. I'd hoped against hope that she wasn't involved in whatever had happened to Michael, but Tyler's words were confirming my worst fears. Mommy asked where I was, and Daddy told her I was staying with you for fall break. I knew Daddy was lying to protect me, but I didn't dare move. I could see Daddy's hands shaking, but he was trying to act calm. Tyler stopped talking and buried his face in my shoulder, his whole body shaking. I rubbed his back the way I used to rub Michael's when he had nightmares as a little boy. It's okay, baby. You're being so brave. Can you tell us what happened next? After a few deep breaths, Tyler continued. Mommy started yelling at Daddy about money. She said something about debts and how Daddy had to help her or there would be trouble. But Daddy shook his head and told her he couldn't keep giving her money, that she'd already taken too much from our family. Detective Rodriguez looked up from his notebook. What happened after your daddy said that? The tall man stepped forward and said something real quiet to Daddy, something that made Daddy's face turn white. Then Mommy started screaming louder, and Daddy told her to leave. That's when the man pushed Daddy real hard. Tyler's words came faster now, like he needed to get them out before he lost his courage. Daddy stumbled backward and tried to catch himself, but the man pushed him again, harder. Daddy fell and hit his head on the corner of the coffee table. There was a loud sound like when I dropped my piggy bank, and then Daddy didn't move anymore. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The image of my son, my sweet Michael, lying motionless on his living room floor was almost more than I could bear. But Tyler wasn't finished. I wanted to run to Daddy, but I was too scared. Mommy was crying and saying this wasn't supposed to happen, but the tall man told her to be quiet. They wrapped Daddy in my favorite blanket, the one with the stars on it, and carried him outside. I heard a truck start up and drive away. "How long did you stay under the bed?" Tyler, Detective Rodriguez, asked gently. "I don't know. A long time." I was too scared to come out. I found that water bottle under there, and when I got really thirsty, I drank what was left in it, but then it was empty, and I got so thirsty and hungry, but I was afraid Mommy might come back. The thought of my grandson hiding under that bed for days, alone and terrified, made me want to scream, but I kept my voice calm for Tyler's sake. "You did exactly the right thing, sweetheart. Daddy would be so proud of how brave you were." As Tyler finished his testimony, memories of Amanda came flooding back. I remembered the first time Michael brought her home to meet me, how she'd blushed when I taught her to make my famous biscuits. She'd been a kindergarten teacher then, full of dreams about making a difference in children's lives. I remembered how her eyes would light up when she talked about her students, how gentle she was with Tyler when he was just a baby. But that sweet girl had disappeared somewhere along the way, replaced by someone I barely recognized. The gambling had started small, just a few dollars on online poker sites, but it grew into something monstrous that consumed everything good in her life. I remembered the first time Michael called me, crying, because Amanda had gambled away their rent money. "Mama, I don't know what to do," he'd said, his voice breaking like it did when he was 12 and his dog got hit by a car. "She promised she'd stop, but she keeps lying to me. That was just the beginning." Over the next 2 years, I watched my son sell everything he loved to pay Amanda's debts. First it was his truck, the red Chevy he'd saved up for since he was 16. Then it was the tools his grandfather had left him, the ones he'd planned to pass down to Tyler someday. When the debt collectors started calling me, threatening to hurt my family if Amanda didn't pay up, I cleaned out my savings account without hesitation. It was money I'd been putting aside for my retirement, but family comes first. I remembered the last time I saw Amanda before the divorce, how she'd looked at me with cold, empty eyes when I tried to talk to her about getting help. "Mind your own business, Margaret," she'd snapped. "This is between Michael and me." The sweet girl who used to call me Mama Maggie was gone, replaced by a stranger who saw dollar signs where love used to be. Michael had fought hard for custody of Tyler, and when the judge ruled in his favor, I thought our nightmare was over. I thought Amanda would disappear from our lives and let us heal. But sitting in that hospital room, listening to Tyler's testimony, I realized she'd been planning something much worse than I could have ever imagined. Detective Rodriguez finished writing Tyler's statement and looked at both of us with determination in his eyes. "Miss Margaret, I want you to know that we're going to find Amanda and whoever helped her. Tyler's testimony gives us everything we need to move forward." Over the next few days, while Tyler slowly started to recover his strength, Detective Rodriguez kept me updated on the investigation. They'd found security camera footage from a neighbor's house showing a dark pickup truck parked outside Michael's home on the night of the storm. The truck had Georgia plates, and they were running them through the system. Mrs. Eleanor Washington, Michael's 70-year-old neighbor, came forward with crucial information. She'd been sitting by her window during the storm, worried about a leak in her roof, when she heard shouting coming from Michael's house. "I almost called the police right then," she told Detective Rodriguez, wringing her hands, "but I was scared of getting involved. Now I wish I had." Mrs. Washington described seeing 2 figures carrying something long and heavy out to the truck. "It was wrapped in what looked like a blanket," she said, her voice shaking. "I thought maybe they were moving furniture, but now I know better." The breakthrough came when Detective Rodriguez discovered Michael's life insurance policy in his home office. Amanda was still listed as the primary beneficiary, even though they'd been divorced for over a year. The policy was worth enough money to pay off all her gambling debts and leave her comfortable for years to come. "This gives us motive," Detective Rodriguez explained to me over coffee in the hospital cafeteria. If Michael died in what appeared to be an accident, Amanda would collect the full amount. She was desperate, Miss Margaret, and desperate people do terrible things. The next piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. A man named Carlos Rivera walked into the police station, nervous and sweating, asking to speak with someone about Amanda Mitchell. He was a loan shark who'd been pressuring Amanda for months about a $20,000 debt. She came to me 3 weeks ago. Carlos told Detective Rodriguez during his interview. Said she'd have my money soon, that she had a plan to get a big payout. I thought she was just blowing smoke. But now I'm wondering if she was talking about insurance money. Carlos led them to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Atlanta, a place where his organization sometimes stored things they didn't want found. Detective Rodriguez called me that evening, his voice heavy with sorrow. "Miss Margaret, I need you to prepare yourself. We found a body at the warehouse. We believe it's Michael." The next morning, I made the hardest trip of my life to the county morgue. Tyler was finally sleeping peacefully, thanks to the mild sedatives Dr. Chen had prescribed. So I left him in the care of the nurses and followed Detective Rodriguez through those cold, sterile hallways. When they pulled back the sheet, I saw my son's face, pale and still, but unmistakably my Michael. The boy who used to bring me breakfast in bed on Mother's Day, who'd called me every Sunday without fail, who'd been the best father Tyler could have asked for. I collapsed into Detective Rodriguez's arms, sobbing for the future that had been stolen from all of us. The medical examiner, Dr. Williams, was a kind man with gentle hands and a voice that had delivered too many heartbreaking diagnoses. He explained that Michael had died from severe traumatic brain injury, consistent with Tyler's testimony about the fall. The time of death matched the night of the storm exactly. Every detail of Tyler's account was being confirmed by the evidence, and each confirmation felt like another nail in the coffin of my heart. "Your son didn't suffer, Miss Margaret," Dr. Williams said softly. "The injury would have caused immediate unconsciousness." It was meant to comfort me, but knowing that Michael's last moments were filled with fear for Tyler's safety made it impossible to find peace in those words. Detective Rodriguez wasted no time following up on the leads from Carlos Rivera and the warehouse discovery. Within 48 hours, they'd tracked down Amanda's accomplice, a man named Jake Morrison who had a long history of working with loan sharks and debt collectors. When they brought him in for questioning, I watched from behind the one-way glass as Detective Rodriguez laid out all the evidence they'd gathered. Jake was a rough-looking man in his 40s, with calloused hands and nervous eyes that kept darting around the interrogation room. At first, he denied everything, claiming he'd never heard of Amanda Mitchell or Michael. But when Detective Rodriguez showed him the security camera footage and the DNA evidence from the blanket found in his truck, his story started to fall apart. "Look, I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt," Jake finally said, running his hands through his greasy hair. "Amanda said we were just going to scare him, make him give her some money. She said he owed her from when they were married." Detective Rodriguez leaned forward. "So you're saying Amanda planned this? She's the one who knew about the insurance policy," Jake continued, his voice getting stronger as he tried to shift blame. "She said if something happened to Michael, she'd split the money with me. But I swear, I never meant to push him that hard. It was supposed to look like an accident." "What about Tyler?" Detective Rodriguez's voice was cold as ice. "You left an 8-year-old boy to starve under that bed." Jake's face crumpled. "Amanda said the kid was at his grandmother's house. We didn't know he was there until it was too late. I wanted to call for help. But Amanda said it would ruin everything. The confession was everything we needed to bring Amanda to justice, but finding her proved to be another challenge entirely. She disappeared the day after Michael's murder, using fake identification to rent a car and drive to Florida. Detective Rodriguez coordinated with law enforcement agencies across 3 states, and finally, 2 weeks after we'd found Tyler, They caught Amanda at a bus station in Miami, trying to board a Greyhound to Mexico. When they brought her back to Atlanta for trial, I made the difficult decision to attend every day of the proceedings. Tyler was doing better with Dr. Chen's help, but he still had nightmares and refused to sleep without the lights on. Pastor James Miller from our church in Savannah had driven up to be with us, and his presence was a comfort during those dark days. The trial attracted media attention from across Georgia. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named District Attorney Patricia Hayes, presented Tyler's testimony through a recorded video session to avoid traumatizing him further. Watching my grandson's small voice fill that courtroom, describing the night his father was murdered, broke something inside me that I don't think will ever fully heal. Amanda sat at the defendant's table, looking nothing like the woman who used to braid Tyler's hair and read him bedtime stories. Her face was gaunt, her hair unwashed, and her eyes held an emptiness that spoke of a soul that had lost its way completely. When the prosecutor played the recording of Tyler's testimony, I saw Amanda flinch and cover her face with her hands. The defendant planned and executed the murder of Michael Mitchell for financial gain. District Attorney Hayes told the jury during her opening statement, she used her knowledge of his insurance policy and her access to his home to orchestrate a crime that left an 8-year-old boy traumatized and a devoted grandmother to pick up the pieces of a shattered family. The evidence was overwhelming. The security footage, Jake Morrison's confession, the DNA evidence from the truck, and most damning of all, the insurance policy with Amanda's name still listed as beneficiary. Amanda's defense attorney, a young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, tried to argue that she was a victim of her gambling addiction and Jake Morrison's influence. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he said during his closing argument, "my client is a sick woman who was manipulated by dangerous people. She never intended for anyone to die." But District Attorney Hayes wasn't having any of it. The defendant made a conscious choice to involve herself with criminals. She made a conscious choice to go to her ex-husband's home with a violent man. She made a conscious choice to leave an 8-year-old child to die of starvation rather than call for help. These are not the actions of someone who was merely manipulated. When Amanda took the stand in her own defense, I felt a mixture of rage and pity watching her try to explain away the inexplicable. She claimed that Jake had acted on his own, that she'd only gone to Michael's house to ask for help with her debts. But when the prosecutor cross-examined her, the truth came out. "Isn't it true, Miss Mitchell, that you researched the terms of your ex-husband's life insurance policy 3 weeks before his death?" "I don't remember," Amanda mumbled. "Isn't it true that you told Jake Morrison you would split the insurance money with him if Michael died?" "I never said that." "Isn't it true that you knew Tyler was in the house that night and chose to leave him there to cover up your crime?" At that question, Amanda broke down completely. "I thought he was at his grandmother's house," she screamed. "I never would have hurt Tyler. He's my son." "But you did hurt him." District Attorney Hayes replied coldly, "You killed his father and left him to die." The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. When they returned with their verdict, the foreman stood up and read the words that would give Tyler and me some measure of justice. "We find the defendant, Amanda Mitchell, guilty of murder in the first degree, guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, and guilty of child endangerment. Judge Morrison," a stern woman with silver hair and kind eyes, sentenced Amanda to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jake Morrison received 25 years for his role in the crime. As the bailiff led Amanda away in handcuffs, she turned to look at me one last time. I saw a flicker of the girl she used to be in her eyes, and despite everything she'd done, I felt sorry for the person she'd become. After the trial ended, Tyler and I returned to Savannah, where the Spanish moss hung like gentle curtains from the old oak trees, and the pace of life moved slow enough for healing to begin. I'd made the decision to sell Michael's house in Atlanta. I couldn't bear the thought of Tyler growing up in the shadow of that tragedy. And besides, That little boy belonged with his grandma, surrounded by the love and stability he deserved. The first few months were the hardest. Tyler would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, calling for his daddy and asking if the bad people were coming back. Dr. Chen had referred us to a wonderful child psychologist in Savannah, Dr. Rebecca Martinez, who specialized in trauma recovery for children. She taught Tyler coping mechanisms and helped him understand that what happened to his father wasn't his fault. Children often blame themselves for things that are completely beyond their control. Dr. Martinez explained to me during one of our sessions, Tyler feels guilty because he couldn't save his father, and he's afraid that by hiding under the bed, he somehow caused Michael's death. We need to help him understand that he did exactly what his father wanted him to do, and that his survival is a gift to both of you. Slowly, with patience and prayer and the support of our church community, Tyler began to heal. Pastor Miller and his wife, Miss Dorothy, became like surrogate grandparents to him. The congregation at First Baptist Church of Savannah embraced us with open arms, bringing casseroles and offering babysitting and simply being present during the darkest days. One of the most difficult conversations I had to have with Tyler was about forgiveness. He was angry at his mother, understandably so, and he'd often ask me why God let bad things happen to good people like his daddy. I didn't have easy answers, but I tried to help him understand that holding on to anger would only hurt him in the long run. Tyler, baby, I told him one evening as we sat on the front porch swing, watching the fireflies dance in the garden. Your mama made some terrible choices that hurt all of us. But she's still your mama, and somewhere deep inside, there's still a part of her that loves you. But she killed Daddy, Tyler said, his voice small and confused. Yes, she did, and that was wrong. But if we carry hate in our hearts, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. We have to forgive, not for her sake, but for ours. It took time, but eventually Tyler began to understand. We started writing letters to Amanda, not to send them, but as a way for Tyler to express his feelings. Dr. Martinez said it was important for him to have a safe space to process his emotions about his mother, even if she wasn't there to receive them. As the seasons changed and Tyler settled into his new school, I found myself thinking more and more about other families who might be going through similar struggles. The trial had brought attention to the issue of gambling addiction and domestic violence, and I started receiving letters from women across the country who were dealing with their own family crises. One letter in particular touched my heart. It was from a woman named Susan in Alabama whose daughter had developed a gambling problem and was threatening to take her grandchildren away if Susan didn't give her money. I don't know what to do, Susan wrote. I love my daughter, but I'm afraid she's going to hurt those babies. That's when I knew I had to do something more than just survive our tragedy. I had to use our story to help other families avoid the same fate. With Pastor Miller's encouragement and the support of our church, I started a support group for families affected by gambling addiction. We met every Tuesday evening in the church fellowship hall, sharing our stories and offering each other hope. Tyler, now 9 years old and stronger than I ever imagined possible, sometimes came to the meetings with me. He would color quietly in the corner while the adults talked, but occasionally he would speak up with the kind of wisdom that only comes from surviving something terrible. My mama got sick in her heart. He told one group of grandparents who were struggling with their son's addiction, but my daddy still loved me, and Grandma Maggie loves me, and that's what matters. The support group grew from 5 people to 20, then 30. We started a scholarship fund in Michael's name to help children who had lost parents to gambling-related violence. We partnered with local law enforcement to provide training on recognizing the warning signs of gambling addiction and domestic abuse. Detective Rodriguez, who had become like family to us, often spoke at our meetings about the importance of reporting suspicious behavior and trusting your instincts when something doesn't feel right. If Miss Margaret hadn't driven to Atlanta that day, he would tell the groups, Tyler might not have survived. Sometimes being nosy is the most loving thing you can do. As Tyler's 10th birthday approached, he surprised me with a request that broke my heart and made me proud at the same time. Grandma Maggie, he said, I want to visit Mama in prison. I wasn't sure if I was ready for that conversation, but Dr. Martinez thought it might be therapeutic for both Tyler and Amanda. After months of preparation and coordination with the prison system, we made the trip to the women's correctional facility where Amanda was serving her sentence. Amanda had changed dramatically during her time in prison. She'd lost weight, and her hair had gone gray at the temples, but there was something different in her eyes. The emptiness was gone, replaced by a sadness that seemed more human than the hollow stare she'd had during the trial. Tyler, she whispered when she saw him through the glass partition, tears streaming down her cheeks. My baby boy, you've grown so tall. Tyler looked at his mother for a long moment, then picked up the phone. Hi, Mama. I wanted to tell you that I forgive you. Amanda broke down completely, pressing her hand against the glass. I'm so sorry, Tyler. I'm so sorry for what I did to your daddy, for what I put you through. I love you so much, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. Daddy taught me that love means forgiving people even when they mess up really bad, Tyler said, his voice steady and mature beyond his years. I'm still mad about what happened, but I don't want to be angry forever. That visit was a turning point for all of us. Amanda enrolled in every rehabilitation program the prison offered, and she started writing letters to Tyler, real letters this time, full of love and regret and hope for his future. She would never be able to undo the damage she'd caused, but she could try to become the mother Tyler deserved, even from behind bars. As I write this story now, 3 years after that terrible night in October, Tyler is thriving. He's an honor roll student who loves soccer and still builds elaborate Lego creations, though now he builds them for the younger kids at church. He talks to a counselor regularly, and while he still has difficult days, he's learned that healing isn't about forgetting the past. It's about choosing hope for the future. I've learned things too. Painful lessons about the power of addiction to destroy families and the importance of speaking up when something feels wrong. I've learned that justice isn't just about punishment, it's about healing and prevention and making sure other families don't have to endure what we endured. Most importantly, I've learned that love is stronger than tragedy, that forgiveness is possible even in the darkest circumstances, and that sometimes the most broken people can become the strongest advocates for change. To everyone who has listened to our story, I want you to know that if you're dealing with addiction in your family, you're not alone. If someone you love is making choices that scare you, trust your instincts and get help. If you're a grandparent raising grandchildren because of tragedy or addiction, know that you're doing sacred work. The love we have for our families should never be taken for granted, because in a single moment, everything can change. But even in the midst of unimaginable loss, there is hope. Even when justice seems impossible, truth has a way of surfacing. And even when forgiveness feels beyond our reach, love can help us find our way back to wholeness. Tyler and I visit Michael's grave every month, bringing fresh flowers and sharing stories about our daily lives. We tell him about Tyler's soccer games, about the families we've helped through our support group, about the scholarship recipients who are building better futures. And sometimes, when the Georgia wind blows just right through those old oak trees, I swear I can feel Michael smiling down at us, proud of the man his son is becoming and grateful that love found a way to triumph over tragedy. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have had the courage to drive to Atlanta that day? Would you have found the strength to forgive? I hope you never have to find out. But if you do, I hope you'll remember our story and know that healing is possible. Justice can prevail, and love really does conquer all. Thank you for walking this journey with Tyler and me. Your support and prayers have meant more than you'll ever know. God bless you all, and may you never take a single day with your loved ones for granted.